All right. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Welcome to your Daily Dose of Awesome, which is 15 minutes of education, inspiration, and gosh, I forget what I said now. What motivation, education, inspiration? Anyway, we got you covered. We're going to get your day started right. Hopefully, your day is starting a little bit better, perhaps, than my day. So, as of yesterday, I have a 4-month-old, which is a wonderful thing. But last night he decided that sleep was just totally for suckers and big boys just don't need sleep. So I am definitely running on a bit of a deficit. So I'm going to try and make everything that I share with you today, make sense and be reasonably well structured and easy to follow. So bear with me. And again, hope you're having a great day. Let me know where you're coming in from. The title of today's talk is going to be the Nick Saban secret to success. And if you don't know what Nick Saban is, don't worry about it. We'll get there. I'll kick things off, though, with 3 folks who you probably do know and something that I think is interesting about them. So right now, the 3 most wealthy individuals on Earth, we've got Bill Gates, we've got Warren Buffett, and we've got Jeff Bezos. All right, these are the 3 most successful, most wealthy human beings. These are the multi billionaires. They've accomplished a ton in their life, right? And one thing I think that's interesting about perhaps their childhood and their upbringing is, even though, of course, they are wildly successful, I mean, they're the most successful, they had, certainly not of the same caliber, but they had very successful parents and family members in most cases, okay? So if you look through their family, you have successful executives, you have successful lawyers and business folks and entrepreneurs. I believe Bezos's grandfather, who had a very large hand in raising him, had a ranch, actually a very successful and very large ranch where Bezos would go and hang. So we get this notion that even though those things aren't necessarily, those things didn't create the success of these individuals, they grew up in an environment that taught them a lot about success and about the habits and rituals and just kind of like the day-to-day life of a more successful person, right? Because when you have a family and they are accomplishing a ton, you kind of get to see what that looks like, right? So if you have a parent that's a successful executive or lawyer or whatnot, you're just kind of seeing sort of almost the unspoken parts of what success looks like. Because again, success is something that's happening every single day. It's things that are habituated. It's really it's behaviors and things that are really just occurring all of the time. So I think that's interesting, that's how I wanted to kick this off, because I think that when we're thinking about success and wealth creation and entrepreneurship, there are really just kind of these very fundamental things that we need to master. That they're not necessarily like all that sexy, right? They're not exciting or there's nothing like terribly fancy about them. It's just the basics, right? It's just the basics. These are just things that we need to really be accomplishing on a daily basis to get where we want to go. So that's where I wanted to kick things off. To sort of on a personal note, what's really cool is so my wife just this week, so on Monday, she defended her dissertation here at the University of Alabama. And so she is now officially Dr. Briggs, and she's concluding her education here, and we'll be moving. I'm not sure where, but we will be moving somewhere this year. So we're very excited about that, and we're going to be leaving Tuscaloosa behind. And the thing that's kind of been here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the thing that's sort of, it was kind of the culture that we were thrust into is football, right? And Nick Saban, as I kick things off, Nick Saban is the coach of the Alabama football team here. And I'm not from like football country, right? Like I'm originally from North Carolina, and we like basketball, right? Actually, if any of you are also fans of basketball, you probably saw that UNC just won the national championship this year. So, go Heels. That's cool. And so I grew up, as a kid very much in basketball country. So football was this entirely new thing to me. So when I moved here, I had to learn a lot about football. And of course, I had to learn a lot about Nick Saban, because he's the talk of the town, right? So he's the coach. I don't know exactly how many years. I think it's like something like maybe 8 or perhaps 10 years he's been the coach here. But in that time, he's won 4 national championships. And if he wins one more, he'll be, I think, he's won 4 here. He's won 5 total. And if he wins one more, he'll be tied with Bear Bryant, who's the most successful college football coach of all time. So it's a big deal. And Bear Bryant was also the coach here at Alabama. So Alabama has this history of, go Tigers. We have an LSU fan, I think, or you could be an Auburn fan. So we have this history in town. That's sort of the culture. And one thing I really appreciate about Nick Saban is he really focuses on the fundamentals. Okay, if you ever watch the way that Alabama plays football, it's nothing fancy. They're not doing trick plays. I mean, they might occasionally LSU, got it. And so good luck this coming year. I'm impressed by the Alabama's young quarterback, but you guys got a new coach, so best of luck. Lost my train of thought. So he's still working on that lack of sleep last night. My son decided between about 3 and 5, he was like, you know what, sleep is just, I'm just not doing it right now. It was just wide awake. So I'm recovering. So Nick really focuses on just the straight up fundamentals. And again, it's nothing fancy. He's not pulling out the trick plays. You might see one of those per season. And in the post game recaps, he's just always talking about, these are the absolute fundamentals of the game. Did we play just fundamentally good football, right? Again, nothing fancy, just is everyone doing their job? Is everyone doing what they're supposed to be doing? And the fewer errors and mistakes that you make, right, the more likely you are to win. So again, it's really focusing on these kind of not sexy things, right? You see a lot of other teams out there, and they'll be pulling out these really impressive, lineups, right? Like I can remember, again, I'm not a huge football fan. It's the culture around here. Matter of fact, you can probably see I'm due. I meant to take a shower for you guys. I apologize, but again, I'm off to a late start this morning. But I'm due for a haircut, right? And if you go to the local barbershop here, it's absolutely imperative that you understand everything about the team, the last game that happened. And I made the mistake the first time I went to the local barbershop here in town, and I sat down, and I think the A game had just happened, and they asked me if I'd watched the game, and I was like, oh, no, I didn't catch it, And so I said, well, who won, And if you're a football fan, then that's a really ridiculous question. And everyone laughed, and I had no idea why that was funny at the time. I know now, but I didn't know at the time. So it's one of those things where, just to be a part of the culture on here, you have to learn all this stuff. You have to kind of be a part of it. It's the same, of course, in any industry. And, in our industry, there's a particular culture that you need to learn. There's a particular way in which we speak about things, right? There's a particular way in which we think about certain things. There's certain words that we use and certain concepts that we cherish and we hold dear. And again, it's just a cultural thing. And so I really, of course, encourage all of you to, if entrepreneurship and online network marketing perhaps is that's the culture that you want to assimilate, and you really want to master those fundamentals, one of the best things you can do is go back and read the classics. Really read sort of the texts that got us here. And I actually did a blog post which you can check out on our blog at elitemarketingpro.com/blog. There's a post and it's called the I got to think of what it's called. But it's essentially the classics of network marketing, and you can go back and you can see there are 26 selections that you can check out that are really the classics over the past century in network marketing, going all the way back to James Allen and the Power of Positive Thinking, which I think was published in about 1906 or maybe like 1912, somewhere in there. So the kind of tradition of like positive thinking. And it really comes out of sales, right? Like back in the day, it was door-to-door salesmen that were kind of needing this inspiration and motivation and also working on doing the personal development so that they were a more attractive character. So, when you're going door to door and trying to sell, vacuums or whatever it is, right? You're an attractive person that someone actually wants to listen to, and someone that actually might want to let you into their home and educate them about whatever it is that you happen to be selling. So anyway, we have a long tradition, and I really encourage you guys to kind of go back and check out, look at the history of the industry, look at the history of sales and network marketing, which I believe kicks in somewhere in like the maybe the 50s. One of you actually might know the history. That should be another subject that I dive into, is like what exactly is the history of the network marketing business model, because I think that'd be really cool, and it's not something that I know a ton about. So like I said, we're here in Tuscaloosa. My wife just defended her dissertation, just got her PhD. She's putting the final touches right now on the text, and we'll be heading out. But I did want to kind of acknowledge again Nick Saban here at the university, the head coach, and how hard, of course, all of those guys on the team. This is something that we kind of know, and it's something that is really emphasized, of course, in the program. Is those guys, they're literally up at like 5 a.m. every morning, like running steps and just like working really hard, and that's what it takes to generate the kind of success that they've had here in this particular program. Again, it's not like, a lot of it is not the sexiest stuff. Again, Nick really focuses on just what are the fundamentals of the game, and they just practice like the really basic moves over and over and over again. And that is so much of this particular industry, where a lot of it, the things that are really going to propel you and move you forward aren't necessarily the hottest new tactic or strategy. It's literally just day in, day out, getting up and doing the things that you need to be doing. And one thing I really want you guys to think about, so another one of the reasons, again, you could see I'm a little all over the place this morning, but bear with me. One of the reasons I again, in addition to kind of us leaving this area, is Nick Saban's contract was just renewed. And Heather says daily consistency, and that is absolutely huge. So Nick Saban's contract was just renewed, and this is actually, I saw this news like maybe yesterday, the day before, and this is actually what gave me the idea. And so I believe he's pulling in, I think it's like, I don't know, like 11.5 million per year, and that's his contract here at the university. And I was seeing kind of all the chatter online about this, and a lot of people were, commenting like, oh gosh, how is it that this one individual is making so much money? And it seems, I guess, for a lot of folks particularly striking in a state like Alabama, which Alabama, as some of you are probably aware, Alabama is by far, not the most wealthy and not the most well-off, right, state in the nation. As a matter of fact, in a lot of categories, Alabama is like 49, right, with only Mississippi really being any more, having sort of a lack of wealth and education, healthcare, like all of these things, right? Like Alabama is not, by any stretch of the imagination, doing particularly well in a lot of really key metrics as compared with some of the other states in the U.S. Okay, so then you have people saying like, oh, Nick Saban, here he is in Alabama making, this kind of money when you have all of these problems in the state. Now, what's interesting about that, of course, we know this. We know that people have a really kind of broke and bankrupt mindset and some really funky ideas about money and how money works and what money actually does. So to give you guys some context, because I've been here in Tuscaloosa for, my wife's been here for 8 years. I've been here for 6 years now, right? Okay. So you might think like, oh gosh, well, probably not you. You guys are a really savvy crowd of entrepreneurs. And I think that a huge part of that process, of course, is going to be working through some of those negative aspects about, money and wealth and success, and some people, of course, are going to maybe have still some lingering ideas. And that's what I'm hoping to kind of talk with you guys about today. Because one of the awesome things about Nick Saban being here is Tuscaloosa has completely transformed, right, over the past decade. I mean, you really wouldn't recognize this town, and it's entirely thanks to Nick Saban being here and the football program, right? That has absolutely just changed the face. It was completely unrecognizable, right? So had that not happened, right, if they did not have Nick Saban here in town, all of this would not have occurred, right? All of this economic development would not have occurred. Now, when I'm here in our complex, and what's interesting, that also the demographic of the people just living here is entirely different. I see more plates now from other places. I see plates from California. I see plates from Texas. I see plates from Pennsylvania, right? Because of the success of the football program, there are so many people now from out of state. I mean, I presume that they are probably football fans. They probably come from a football part of the world. They want to come here and they want to have the Alabama experience, right? Because it's a very football-oriented place, right? I mentioned this before. I mean, like, it's literally like, this is a lifestyle. This is like bordering on like a religion here. And it was crazy for me when I first moved here. It was like, this is very different. Like, people are way more serious about this than I'm used to. But it's a huge, huge thing here, okay? So people want to have that experience, right? So like at the university, you have a very, like the tailgating culture. I mean, it's crazy. Like the stadium, it's a huge, huge stadium. And on game day, like the entire town is just like people tailgating and barbecuing and really enjoying that entire football experience. So people from all around the country literally are moving here. Now, the football program has literally, of course, created that national kind of exposure, and you have people from all over now moving here. So all of the money, right, all of this economic resource from other places is now coming to Tuscaloosa, and the town has literally exploded. Exploded over the past decade. So what's interesting to me is, of course, is you see people, and they have this just totally bankrupt mindset about, money and success. And they kind of begrudge, right, Nick Saban for pulling in. And I don't really know how that compares. I'm assuming his salary compares very, very favorably. He's probably one of the highest paid college football coaches, which, right, kind of makes sense, right? He's won more national championships in this era than anyone else. And his salary probably compares well with professional football coaches. Maybe some of you, if there are any sports fans on, maybe some of you are kind of aware of some of those stats. I don't really keep up with it that much. But it's hard for me to imagine, someone, begrudging, someone who's so successful at what they do, and someone who would be essentially so in demand and could essentially pick up a job anywhere else, right? But they're able to keep him here. They're able to keep him here, and that's creating such economic development that it's totally changing the face of this town. It's bringing money from all over. And matter of fact, I don't necessarily know that there's a correlation between international enrollment, but we have huge out-of-state enrollment and a huge international enrollment here as well. And so I'm assuming that it's probably just the fact that there's so much more money funneling into the university, and they can fund so many more research projects, and they can bring like engineers and such from Asia. We have a huge Asian population here in town, and that's awesome, right? And so think about just all the economic activity. Yeah, Michelle says he's paid by his value, and that is absolutely correct. Like, he is bringing something, a value to the market that no one else essentially can bring. Therefore, he's going to be paid the most. Of course, to us entrepreneurs, this makes sense. And so, and this is something we have to contend with, right? We have to contend with a society that has, not everyone, of course, but in general, like, our society has, these really negative emotions and associations with wealth and with success, and really people that are at essentially the top of their game. And so much of life is kind of structured as like a tournament, right, where it's like, the people at the very, very top, the people who are at the very top of the game in any particular sphere, those are the ones that are going to win the most, right? And this is true across the board, right? We think of like Hollywood, we think of actors and such as being like so well paid, and it's true, some of them are, but you have outliers, right? You have like your I don't know who the highest paid are, maybe like your Tom Cruises and your Charlize Theron's, right? Like whoever, I don't know who the top billed, maybe Scarlett Johansson is like the top billed female actor. Anyway, point being, you have a couple of characters, right? Those are the ones that are absolutely at the top of the game right now. Everybody else, sure, they're paid well, but not necessarily that well, right? Like, I actually remember seeing an article one time about kind of your average salary of someone that's appearing in whether it's a television show or movies and such. And it's really like not, especially if you were living in California, in Hollywood, it's probably very expensive, right, to live there. And a lot of the actors and actresses aren't making like as much money as you would probably think, right? Again, you have those outliers. Again, it's kind of structured in that model where a couple of people that are just like at the top of the game, they're winning the most. Everyone else, definitely not as much. And that's just, you're going to find that. It doesn't matter which industry. So again, Nick Saban here in Tuscaloosa, and is bringing so much value personally, right, to for himself. You know, he's a very high value individual. He's bringing a lot of value to the football program, but just into this entire area, right, just raising the awareness of this area and just bringing so much economic activity here, which is creating so many jobs, right? So it's a really cool thing to see. It's a really cool thing to see how that process works. And it, you know, it really, like, economics is, don't get me wrong, economics is a really complicated topic, right? There's a reason why you can get degrees and advanced degrees in economics. So I'm not going to pretend like I know a ton about economics, because it's something that's very, very, very complicated. And anyone that tries to like super simplify economics is probably not giving you like a very complete or holistic picture of exactly how an economy works. Because again, really complicated stuff. You could spend years and years and years and years studying it. But one thing I do know is true, and that is trade creates wealth. This is always true. You look at history, trade creates wealth. Anytime money, goods, resources, value is moving from one place to another place, it just creates wealth. I can't tell you exactly how that works, right? Like I can't. I wish I could. I think it's a fascinating topic. But anytime there's trade happening, right? You think about like the Silk Road or the spice trade, or anytime you have goods going from one part of the world to another part of the world, that's creating a ton of wealth. It's creating a ton of wealth between the traders, the merchants, everyone that's along that supply chain is making out really well. Anytime there's demand, right, like people all of a sudden start getting wealthy, and that cascades through the manufacturers, cascades through all the the middle people that are transporting. I mean, like there's a ton of wealth to be made. And I don't know a ton about the whole process of how exactly wealth and value are created, but clearly they can be manufactured. Essentially, like an area can go from being not in demand, right? But then all of a sudden there's a resource that some other place wants, and all of a sudden, boom, all this industry pops up, and you have all this economic activity. So trade is a wonderful thing, right? Again, if you look at history, anytime you see trade activity, that's the creation of wealth. And anytime you see a lack of trade activity, that is the absence of wealth, right? It's just look at history. Even look at the modern day, right? Like look at a place like North Korea, right? North Korea is a very isolated state. And there's not a lot of trade. There's not a lot going in and out, and you have just stagnation, right? Like there's no demand, right, for like North Korean goods. Well, maybe there could be, but you have a government there that's just not receptive at all to the modern world, right? So you have a lack of trade, therefore you have a lack of wealth. Okay, so what's interesting to me as well is that this is also true in just your personal life and your personal finances. Trade is what's going to create wealth for you. And I think perhaps the best way of thinking of this might be, let's say you had a piece of property. Let's say you had let's say you had a house or a piece of land or something, right? Now, if you weren't there using it yourself, you wouldn't just let it sit there, right? You'd rent it out. You would do something with it. Otherwise, it would just experience entropy, right? Like it would sit there and it would degrade and decay, and there would just essentially be no economic activity. And you would never do that, right? If you had a spare piece of property or a spare home, you wouldn't just let it sit there. But a lot of people are really comfortable doing that with their money, right? Like a lot of people are comfortable with letting their money essentially stagnate, right? Because we all know about the mechanisms of inflation, right? Like anytime your money is just sitting there not doing anything, it's losing value because it isn't doing anything. It isn't in trade. There's no motion happening with your money. And I don't even need to get like abstract. I mean, some people go to a more like spiritual place with this, right? Like in getting into kind of flow and getting into kind of the exchange and having energy moving around, all that kind of stuff. We don't even need to go there. I mean, it's just, if your money's sitting there, it's degrading in value and it's not doing anything. And what I've seen so often in business is that the people that are willing to actually spend money, right? Those are the people that make money. I mean, it's simple as that, right? Like if you're willing to invest in your business, if you're willing to invest in advertising, then you're going to be one of the folks that is successful. And so many times in our community, I've seen it over and over, where people don't find success until they kind of ante up to a certain level, right? Until they actually commit to the business and stop just kind of, stop kind of thinking about it, stop holding back, right? But actually get into the flow and start investing in their business. And kind of makes sense from one level too. Like, let's say you are wanting to, sell. Let's say you're an affiliate elite marketing and you're wanting to sell VIP, right? Like, how did it make sense for you to sell something that you haven't yourself purchased, right? Like, in order to be a seller, you need to first be a buyer, because it just doesn't even really ethically make sense to try and sell something that you yourself haven't purchased. So, again, getting really into the flow and the trade, and the fact that trade is really the mechanism that creates wealth. I really want to encourage you guys to just really, really commit. I actually just saw a study quite recently, and the question was, because student debt is a huge thing. It's a huge topic of conversation right now, and I totally get that. Right? Education is expensive, and a lot of people are questioning, and I think they're right to question in a lot of instances whether or not, right, the college education, like, is this kind of an archaic thing? Does it make sense for a lot of people? And I would absolutely agree that a lot of the critiques that are levied against the 4-year college education are correct, right? Like, there are a lot of degrees that just aren't going to provide you a lot of value in return, yet they are very expensive to procure. This is true. However, there is also a very strong argument, and we can look at this statistically. We can look and see that places that have universities are places that have a lot of economic activity, thus have a lot of opportunity. And these days, more and more and more high-paying roles, even if they're sort of in manufacturing, even if they're something that at one point in time seemed to be, kind of classified as like blue collar, there's a large shortage of people who are qualified to fulfill those positions. I saw an article recently, and it was actually mentioning Auburn, which is here in Alabama, and there was a, who was it? It was like, I don't know if it was Boeing, but it was definitely a company that you would have heard of that creates turbines for airplanes and other large applications. And essentially what they were saying, they moved to the area nearby Auburn because they had a pool of educated folks that could then work in, again, what we would not necessarily consider a white collar position. This is a very much a manufacturing position, but these days, to get that manufacturing job, you really kind of need to know how to do some fairly sophisticated mathematics and programming and work with some pretty sophisticated software. So education is still just a really, and I think it's becoming increasingly important. And actually the point I was going to make is I saw another article that was saying, is there such a thing as too little student debt, right? And what they found was kids that have the least amount of student debt actually don't succeed. Interestingly, right? They're actually there's kind of a tipping point. I don't know exactly where that tipping point is, but there's a tipping point between having too little debt and the right amount of debt, and then probably, of course, too much debt, which clearly is the case sometimes. But there's kind of a level of investment, essentially, you need to have in your education to kind of, again, make it real and make it really count for you. Because, again, getting back to the idea of trade, there's just that investment in yourself, in your business, in your advertising, in your education. All of these things are really important to ante in and not try and hold back, right? Not try and essentially let your, whatever it is, your value that you've accumulated, your capital in this particular case, not let that stagnate, but really get into the flow of things, get into the exchange and the trade of things. And so that's kind of where I want to encourage you guys to be thinking today is, again, I kick things off with just kind of focusing on the fundamentals, right? There's just doing the things that you should be doing on a daily basis, even though it doesn't seem like, it's not the sexy thing, it's not the easy button, it's not the magic pill, right? All those things, right? Just focus on the fundamentals, the things that we teach you how to do here at Elite Marketing Pro, right? Like if you're advertising on Facebook, I was actually having a conversation, I'll share this with you, and then I have no idea how long I've been talking, but I'll wrap up here in a second. I was actually speaking with someone, a local artist in town, and she was running she has a Facebook page, and she was running a likes campaign, and she was talking about how, she's like, I've got a likes campaign, it's doing pretty well, and I think when I hit 2,000 likes, I'm just going to cut it off, because that's good enough for me. And I had to pause for a second. I was like, whoa, why would you cut it off? She's like, oh, well, I mean, is it kind of just like a vanity thing? Like, I mean, how many more people do I really need to like my page? And I was like, all right, whoa, all right, let's go ahead and fix this right now. Because it's never, and this is true for you guys, of course, as well. It's never going to be cheaper to advertise your business than it is right now, right? Every single thing is going to get more expensive. To get a like, to get a click, to get any kind of activity, right? It's never going to be cheaper than it is today. Therefore, you should be doing it today, not tomorrow, not a week from now, not a month from now, and certainly not a year from now, because everything is just going to get more expensive. You need to be doing what you know you need to be doing right now. Don't delay. If you have a page and you're not running a likes campaign, do it now. It's just going to get more expensive. And so that's what I was telling this local artist, like, no, never, ever, ever stop. Don't ever stop advertising. It just doesn't make sense. If you have a business, you need to be advertising that business. So pick a number that makes sense for you. Pick a number that you can deal with and it works for you. But keep that going consistently, right? Have a budget. Set that budget aside. Know that budget is for advertising your business, and stick to that number. And don't deviate. Just know that is your budget for advertising your business, and you're going to do that every single day, every single week, every single month. Like, end of story. That's the money that goes to advertising your business. So set aside those funds, right, to invest, and don't even have in your mind the possibility of stopping. You always want to be moving forward. You always, again, want to be participating in that exchange, in that investment in your business. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you guys today. Again, any kind of economic stagnation, essentially, anytime funds and capital and resources and value aren't in motion, aren't moving around, they're stagnating. There's nothing happening. There's no value being created, and it's not going to get you where you want to go. So again, it's a little abstract, but really get in there, really invest and grapple with your business. Just focus on the basics and invest, and you guys will definitely going to see success. So with that, again, I have no idea how long I've been talking to you guys, and I hope you have hope I didn't go too long, but I hope you have a fantastic Thursday. Finish up the week strong, and we'll definitely see you next time. Have a good week, everybody.